It's starting. It's starting. It started. Happy New Year, gang. Happy New Year. So this is Goalie Training Pro TV. I think it's episode 8. I think. And we're talking all about the spine. First of all, I hope you all had a safe and happy New Year and setting. You don't have to set goals if it's not your thing. If you do it another time of the year, your birthday or whatever, that's okay. But sort of make a little measuring stick for yourself to see where you're at. We're running the Shutout Smackdown in the Shutout Academy, and it's going really, really well. I got to jump on there after this and have a chat with them, but it's going well. So, you know, just, yeah, you can poo-poo it if it's not your thing, that's okay. But if you're looking, if you're like, if last year this time you said, oh, you know, next year, by this time next year, I'd like to do this, this, and this, and you haven't done it, then it's like, okay, well, there's stuff you want to do, so make a little plan to make it happen. That's all I'm going to say about it. The other thing I'm going to say is, how do you like this and this? It might be backwards because I'm using the front-facing camera. It says it's a goalie thing. You wouldn't understand. But this is the new goalietrainingpro.com gear. And so I actually just got it yesterday. I did a test order myself. So I've got it set up so that you can order it online and it'll get shipped right to your house. I did a test yesterday by myself, or I did a test to myself to make sure I could see how the process went and the flow and everything. Hi, Grant. And it worked really, really well. So okay, let's just, I'll tell you about that maybe on the live Q&A. Really, I didn't even mean to talk about it because this is Goalie Training Pro TV and I just want to get to business and talk about the spine. So, what do you know about the spine? Our spine, I've got a good picture here, so a little, again, visual aid. Our spine is curved, so it's not straight. So when people, you know, say, oh, I really tried to keep a straight back, it's not actually meant to be straight. So what we say in here is you keep a neutral back, which is these curves. So basically this is me standing sideways. I have a curve that goes like this. So it's actually called a lordosis in my neck too. I have a lordosis in my neck. Then I have a curve outward at where my ribs are, so that's called a kyphosis. And then I have a curve inward where my low back is, or an arch where my low back is, which is another lordosis. So there's a cervical lordosis, there's a thoracic kyphosis, and there's a lumbar lordosis. And that's the way it's designed. And these little vertebrae that you see, so each individual vertebra, it's amazing. Like, these are individual pieces, and they're different shaped, and they're actually even different shape, like cervical, or different shape from thoracic, or different shape from lumbar. And they just sit on top of each other. They don't even snap together like you would hope. They just sit on top of each other. And then there's connective tissue that holds them together. There's muscle that holds them together. It's like, it's mind-blowing that like that's the thing. Like, from our pelvis all the way to my head is really just that spine. Our ribs are attached to it. Our rib cage is attached to it, but there aren't like little stays on the side that help hold us up. It's just like this wiggly spine with muscle and connective tissue that keeps us upright. Again, it's mind-blowing that it works at all, that we don't just like crumple into a thing. So I think the other points I want to talk about are that your lumbar vertebra are designed to be pretty stable. They are not intended to have a lot of range of motion. So you know, even like when if I do this at my shoulder, it's, you know, it's my shoulder joint. My scapula also contributes, but it's sort of one thing. When if I'm standing here and I turn like, you know, that to look around, well, each individual vertebra turns as much as it can, you know, within its limit, and those sort of summate to let me turn around like that with my spine. So it's not like a single joint. Here's where we get into trouble. When we sit a lot, or, you know, or we play net with the slouch position, or we just stand with a slouchy position, our thoracic spine gets a little stiffer. We don't have the same rotation when we're bent over as we do when we're in our neutral kyphosis. So we'll tend to get a little bit stiff there. And that's what I'm talking about, stiffen our thoracic spine, which is sort of this this middle back part. So when that gets stiff, and we do need rotation, even just in regular, like driving the car and things like that, but certainly as a goalie, this is really important for you guys, because if they're playing funny behind the net with the puck and trying to just get you moving and get you out of your position, you know, if I can get around more without having to sort of move or turn my skates, as soon as I don't know, because I'm not at that level, but I bet you $100 they watch, and as soon as your skates sort of go from here to here so that you can see, I bet then they, you know, that's a cue for them to whatever, pass it out front or try to deke back and get a wraparound or whatever they're going to do. So if I can stay here and get a lot more rotation and keep my eye on the puck better, that's to my advantage. So when I get stiff in that thoracic spine, I'm not getting that rotation that I'd like to have from there, but I've got all these other vertebrae. So it's like, okay, well then what happens? Well, my neck will try to get more range of motion, and my lumbar spine, my low back, is going to try to facilitate more of that rotation. But that's not their job. So it works, the way it's designed to work is each little segment gives its range motion, and that's what we do. If this gets stiff, well then this has to move more than it's supposed to. Which you're like, but I do it, and my back doesn't, I can do this, my back doesn't hurt. No, it doesn't hurt until it hurts. And then there's a problem, and then there's a big problem. So, you know, even people that have like serious injuries, like serious disc injuries, things like that, that have to have their vertebra stabilized. You know, usually it's like, so there's lumbar vertebrae, and then there's your sacrum. So your sacrum, so I didn't explain this very well. I explained it in the hip video, but this is your sacrum down here, and it's sort of your tailbone. So, and you can see it here. Your pelvis is attached to that. Your pelvis is attached to that. So usually the most common pace for disc injuries is L4, L5, or L5S1. And so sometimes those have to be stabilized. So what happens almost, I won't say all the time, but really common is they stabilize those two segments to take away the pain, and then what happens is within a few years the segment above now has degenerated because they've taken away that range, and the segment above is paying the price, and now it's worn out too. So we want to stay nice and mobile in our thoracic spine. We do things like, and I don't have two camera angles set up today, but we do things like just so sitting, tall sitting with our hands behind our head, and we'll come over in a side bend and then breathe in through our nose for 4 seconds, really trying to fill air into this side, and then breathe out through our mouth, all of our air over, so that we're, you know, expanding and contracting our rib cage and just getting some movement in there. The other thing we'll do, so we might do just like 3 or 4 on each side, staying nice and tall, a rotation, same thing, breathing. We get the double tennis ball, or the peanut, some people call it, and put it under our lumbar spine and do a little bit of our thoracic spine, and do a little thoracic mobilization. The thing I see when people do that thoracic mobilization with the double tennis ball is they'll be like, and it's like that, like you have your the peanut is under your thoracic spine, but you're actually doing lumbar extension. You know, so it's just, if you do that, and you always give yourself a hug to get your shoulder blades out of the way, and then it's just a very small little wiggle to help mobilize those. Do you guys want me to show you that? Do you know at all what I'm talking about, or do you want me to run and get a peanut and show you exactly what I mean? Type a comment, and if you're like yes, or give me like heart or something like that, then I'll run and do it. But for now I'll just keep blabbering away. So that's sort of what your spine looks like. And then there's all the muscles that are attached, and this is kind of a really busy picture. But I want you to understand, because I had an email from someone the other day who was like, I was getting back pain, so I started working on the muscles in my back, like the erector spinae, which are these big strap-like muscles. Like, so if you like look at like you see someone with their shirt off, and they have just on either side of their vertebra, kind of along here, or either side of their spine, like that, they have just like, they look like two ropes. Those are your erector spinae. And your erector spinae are like big, they're like big movers. They're not really designed to be a stabilizer so much. So, you know, he was like, yeah, so I got my back muscles really strong. So you might do that with like back extensions, and I don't even know what else he was doing for that. It's not something that we ever, like, we never really are like, we better train your erector spinae, because it's just something like if you're squatting or doing a good functional training program, they're gonna be strong anyway. So unless there's an injury or something that we really need to look after. But anyway, you know, he's like, but now that pain's back and I can't make it go away, so I think I need to make those muscles stronger. Well, no, too, because also if those get stronger, we have to think of the forces. So these muscles, when they contract, they extend us, but they also compress us. So if we're making those really strong and kind of tight all the time, it's sort of crushing us a little bit. So it shouldn't be, it's something that should sort of work. And even when I look at a hockey player, and if I see, even I trained an NHL guy who was like pretty normal, like amount of hypertrophy, but then right sort of at his thoracolumbar junction, that segment was really hypertrophied, like unbelievably hypertrophied. Right away, it's like, okay, what's going on? Like something isn't right. You know, it's dysfunctional the way he would develop those, because it told me that they were doing so much more work than they were supposed to do. So Ryan, I see your question. And I won't really answer too many questions really on Goalie Training Pro TV unless I've confused you somehow. I'll do that on my Friday live Q&A. So yeah. So these are sort of big global muscles. What you need if you want to keep your spine functioning the way it should and be stable. When we talk about core stability, this is a huge part of it. Like, our core isn't just on our front, right? And I mean, some people don't like the term core. I know what you mean, so I'll use it with you. We kind of think of the torso, or everything from the hips to the armpits, but it goes all the way around, like a paper towel roll. You know, if I have a paper towel roll and I set it up on end and I hit the top like that, it's pretty stable. If I take one side and make it weak, then, you know, and press it in, it just collapses underneath me, right? So we need to have the whole thing strong all the way around. So I want you, from this picture, there's not going to be a written quiz or anything, but I want you to get a sense of, like, you know, here's your QL, then you have little muscles that just go from transverse process to transverse process. You have little muscles that go from spinous process to spinous process. You have your multifidus that goes, I can't remember how many segments at a time, but it stabilizes maybe, like, I can't remember, like 3 segments up, and then 3 segments up, and then 3 segments up, so that, you know, there's all different ways that it's nice and stable and supported. It's not really about those global movers. It's like, hopefully by now, I'll show you guys too, hopefully now, oh, Alex Ovechkin joined, sick. Like, hopefully by now, so just kind of look at all the muscles on the right-hand side, you know, and how small they are, and how segmental they are and specialized they are. It's kind of like, I hope by now you understand that, like, our glutes are a really powerful hip muscle, and they're good for our pushing muscles, but they shouldn't be stabilizing our hip joint. You know, we have deeper muscles that are responsible for stabilizing our hip joint. Those are like a big, like, muscle. And we want well, let's just fix this and fix that kind of muscles to do the actual stabilization. So, to use the same analogy, the erector spinae are like muscles, and then these little ones are like, okay, well, if we do this, and I'll be stable, and then you'll be good, and then you can push harder, and then you're not going to be shearing your discs, and you get the idea. Okay, then let's move on. If I'm missing something, let me know. So this is a question that you could have, don't, like, I would prefer you don't say, well, when I'm on the ice, blah, 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 blah. But you could say, hey, what about this? You know, if I'm missing a topic, if I'm forgetting a topic to cover, because I just do these off the top of my head. So next, I think we'll talk a little bit about what discs are, because I think that's sort of misunderstood. Can you see in between the bones, there's a little, like, kind of white colored piece? I'll show you guys too. So in between the vertebra, the body of the vertebra, there's a little white disc in there. That's a disc. And it is sort of shaped a bit like a jelly-filled donut. And it does have fluid in it. So it can sort of move around based on your posture. So, for example, in my lumbar spine, and they're arranged, they're oriented, you know, to adjust to, okay, it's a kyphosis, so it's oriented to be this way. It's a lordosis, it's oriented to be this flat this way. So it is oriented based on where it is in the spine. But so my lumbar spine is supposed to have a little arch, a little lordosis, but if I'm always sitting with crappy posture and sitting on my sacrum rather than my tailbone, so I've rounded my low back and it's sitting in a kyphosis almost, then those discs will start to get like this. Do you ever hear of a disc bulge? That's what it is. So it kind of squishes it to the back, and then it can bulge, and then it can push on that can push on nerves or compress nerves, or, you know, just do miserable things and make you feel awful. So that's part of the reason too that it's like, even with crunches, like we don't do crunches anymore because they're repetitive flexion of hi Terry, because it's a repetitive flexion on the spine. And Stu McGill, who's a spine biomechanist, so he studies the load tolerance of spines and what creates injury and how to prevent injury. But he says it is very much like a coat hanger. So, you know, I can take a metal coat hanger and bend it like this, no problem. Bend it like that, no problem. Bend, fine, 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 snap. And that's what the back's like. You probably all know somebody who has like really hurt their back or herniated a disc in their back, and you're like, how did you do it? Oh, I bent over to pick a t-shirt up off the floor. No way, you just bent over and you herniated a disc? Well, no. You know, it's like, really you should say, like, I've been doing terrible things to my back for years without realizing it. You don't doing them on purpose. And so my back finally bit me in the ass when I bent over to pick up a t-shirt. You know, that's sort of how it works. So those are the discs. So again, like, our spine should move. Like, we're not going to be like robots and, you know, you're going to keep our spine. But we have to have all those muscles working and smart so that they can stabilize us as we go. So that we're not, you know, overworking one element or creating shear forces in another area. It just all has to work together. Even I printed this one off. Even like these are your hip flexors. This is your, what they call your iliopsoas. It's really kind of two muscles that have a common insertion. But like, look at where it goes. It goes right up and attaches to your lumbar vertebrae, and that's muscles in your hip. So it's all integrated together. So what do we do about that? I'm trying to think other stuff. Oh, I know what. So a lot of you email me and you're like, hey, can you give me some stretches for my back? Because my back's always tight, and so I need to stretch it out. A lot of times that is not the right thing to do. Your back is tight probably because your erector spinae are working way too hard and doing things they're not supposed to do because your stabilizers are weak, or not smart, or for some reason they're defacilitated. So again, if we go in and just stretch those muscles out and take out whatever's kind of holding you stable, that actually could create more of a problem and set you up for a worse injury. So really, again, if a muscle, it's just like, that's weird, this muscle is tight all the time. Even though it's not like, oh my God, I can't walk, I have so much pain kind of injury, something is going on, and that's time that it is such money well spent to go see a good physiotherapist, get them to assess what's going on, see why that's always tight. It's chances some muscle somewhere in the chain isn't doing its job. Physiotherapist can help you figure that out, give you some specific exercises to target that muscle, get it working, and then it's going to go away. So other injuries. Hi Karen, how are you today? Other injury stuff, not uncommon to sublux a rib. So a rib will just kind of come out a little bit, and that will start a whole cascade of events. Your body will hate you. So yeah, like a rib will just kind of sublux. Muscles will go into spasm, and it'll hurt when you take in a full breath. So, and it'll be a sharp pain. A lot of people get it and they'll say, "Oh, I pulled my neck," because the spasm will go. So it's it's often more like a higher rib. The spasm will go up into their neck, and it just feels terrible. Like you can hardly even. Sarah, what's shaking? Sarah's our RevCon assistant. You guys know her too. She does tons of stuff on here too. But like you can hardly even roll out of bed in the morning. I used to row competitively, and we get them a lot in rowing because we're so you're always pulling, and it would just pull it out, and it would be like, ooh. So that's one. So again, yeah, and sometimes people be like, I just woke up with it. But that's one that a good physiotherapist can, has manual therapy skills. They can mobilize it back into place, and then it will take a little time for it to settle down. If you just leave it, it might get kind of slowly better, but the longer it stays out, the harder it's going to be to put back in, and it might also come out easier again. So again, it's one, like really anything. If like there's something that's just like, wow, that wasn't there before, you should go see a physiotherapist. But then you can get like facet joint irritation, but it's going to be really hard for you to know, is this facet joint, is this a disc? And either way, you're going to go to the physio to help get it sorted out anyway. But those are kind of I just moved and something in my back, when you actually, and people be like, oh, I strained my back. Most people don't actually strain their back that much. A strain is a muscle thing. It's like a torn muscle. Usually it is something like a facet irritation or a disc irritation. So those are trips to the physiotherapist. There's a thing called a spondylolysis and a spondylolisthesis, and those are usually hyperextension injuries. So somebody gets hyperextended, really common in gymnasts, figure skaters, even football players that get run back. So, it could happen in hockey too. And what happens is where these transverse processes, because the vertebrae don't snap together, but they kind of, will fit together. And so a part of that gets snapped off is what happens. And it can just crack it off, which is spondylolysis, or it can crack it off and the vertebra can shift a little bit, which is spondylolisthesis. Really, there isn't much you can do for it. Definitely get it checked out so you know what it is. And it's more like adolescent athletes. Once we stop growing, we're not really prone to it unless it's a real high velocity thing. I guess you could. But there isn't much you can do to just like make it better now. It just needs to heal over time. But again, you want to get it checked out. And then some people get rattled because they're like, I had a broken back. Well, yeah, but it's pretty inconsequential, like long term. Not at the time it hurts, but long term it's pretty inconsequential. So if we look at, how do we protect our spine? How do we strengthen it? We start with the basics. So when you're doing planking with your team or side plank or glute bridging, make sure you're doing it perfectly. If you're wiggling all around, you're not learning to stabilize. And I already said, yeah, but Maria, you said we want to be stable, but we need to be able to move. Yes, but first thing we need to do is just learn how to stabilize. How can we keep it nice and strong? And then we want to learn, okay, well then how do we make it functionally strong? So then we do ground-based training, just like we do in the Shutout Academy. Those of you that are on it, we'll do, like instead of laying on a bench and doing pec flies, which isn't that helpful to us, we'll do a staggered stance, bungee or cable, reverse fly or pec fly. We'll do landmine, contra shoulder press, or single leg landmine deadlift, or things like that, so that we're teaching our body to stabilize while we move in different planes. And so again, it's so important that you do those things with purpose and precision, because if we're sloppy, or for example, like when people squat and it'll be like, oh, like you butt wink, like your bum tucks under at the bottom. Yeah, I have that. Well, that's actually flexing your spine, your lumbar spine, under a compressive load. And we already talked about even just doing crunches, flexing the lumbar spine is a little bit of a recipe for disc herniations down the road. Well, now you're putting a load on your back and rounding your back. Just a little bit. Well, your spine doesn't know just a little bit. It just knows, like, holy crap, like, we are not supposed to be here. So, you know, it's all those little things. I'm actually just started reading a book called The Gift of Injury by Stu McGill and Brian Carroll. Brian Carroll was a world champion power lifter, like could squat like, I don't know, 4,000 pounds. Not really, but like a lot. And again, like did things crappy, but he could do it and I can lift it until, one day he couldn't. And really actually pretty sad story, like to the point where he was almost ready to take his own life. He was so desperate and in so much back pain. And then he met Dr. McGill, who's the spine biomechanist I told you about, and they kind of rebuilt him and how they rebuilt him. But again, it just started with, for him, and again, it's different for everybody, but for him, it was like, you don't need to stretch your back. Your back doesn't need to be more flexible. It needs to be more stable, and you need to be better at that. And so here's how we build it up. So it's actually a really good book. If you've ever had back injury, I'm enjoying it, so you might want to check it out. Okay, I think that's all I've got for you on the spine today. I think so. So I will see, Jeff, you missed it. We're just leaving. But I will see a bunch of you over in the Shutout Academy. And next week I'll be back with another episode of Goalie Training Pro TV. I'm actually traveling on Thursday. Might do it on Wednesday, a day early. And I'm not really sure what body parts we have left to do. I think we have the shoulder. We got shoulders to do. So we'll do the shoulder. That'll be the end of our story of my life. That'll be the end of our bottoms up, and then we'll talk about other topics. So if you have ideas for other topics, things you want to learn about, hit me up, and I'll let you. Oh, make sure if you're asking questions, either do it on the Goalie Training Pro page of Facebook, or you send it to my assistant, help@hockeytrainingpro.com. I just was on my private, like my personal Facebook page, which I'm happy to have you like come along and see just the dumb things I post, but I don't use it for work. So a bunch of people had asked me questions on there, like back in November and things like that. I don't ever see that, and I probably won't answer questions there anyway, because then I have to look at like Goalie Training Pro page, Goalie Training Lab, Shutout Academy page, Instagram. It's a bit much. So that private page, again, if you give me a friend request and you're in I look at your profile and you're in goalie gear or something like that, I'm like, yeah, first, you're a goalie, you're cool with me, but it's not somewhere I interact for work. So Goalie Training Pro on Facebook, Goalie Training on Instagram, Goalie Training Lab on Facebook. Those are all places that I do hang out and, don't just talk to my high school friends and my cousins out west and that kind of thing. So that's it. That's it for Goalie Training Pro TV this week. I'm Maria from Goalie Training Pro. Duh. I'll catch you next time.